They say time heals everything. But standing there that day, behind my camera, watching her walk down the aisle, I realized some wounds never heal. They just learn to smile for the picture. The music was soft, delicate, violins and piano weaving through the air like a fairy tale. Guests whispered. The smell of roses filled the room, and golden lights bathed everything in a perfect glow. It looked like love. But to me, it felt like punishment. Because the bride, radiant in white lace and trembling with excitement, was Sophie, the woman I was supposed to marry. And the man waiting for her at the altar, confident, smiling, pretending like this was the happiest day of his life, was Ryan, my best friend since childhood. The man who stood beside me when I proposed to her. The man who told me she was the one. Now she was walking toward him, and I was the one paid to capture it. Strange, isn't it? Life has a way of putting you exactly where it hurts the most, and then asking you to smile. I adjusted my camera, pretending to focus. Through the lens, everything looked still, perfect. But inside, I could feel my pulse racing, every heartbeat louder than the music. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, because today wasn't just their wedding day. It was mine too, in a different way. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here photographing the woman I loved, marrying my best friend, I would have thought they were insane. But here I was, and they had no idea what I'd planned for today. A year ago, things were different. Back then, Sophie and I were planning our own wedding, arguing over flowers and playlists, dreaming about our little apartment by the lake. Ryan was part of it all, always helping, always around. He was family, or so I thought. But that story, that betrayal, we'll get to that. Right now, all I could do was keep clicking, keep smiling, keep acting like a stranger behind a camera. I watched Sophie's face as she reached the altar. Her smile trembled for a moment, just a flicker, like she'd remembered something. Maybe a memory of me, or maybe just guilt. She quickly looked away, and Ryan reached for her hand. Everyone clapped softly as the priest began to speak. My hands felt heavy, my chest tight. I tried to steady my breathing, focusing through the lens, pretending none of it mattered. But every word, every promise they made to each other felt like a blade twisting slowly. For better or worse. For richer or poorer. Till death do us part. She'd once whispered those same words to me under the stars, her fingers tracing promises on my skin. And I believed her.
The guests sighed when they kissed. The perfect, beautiful couple. Flashbulbs went off. People cheered. And through it all, I captured every second. Because that's what I was there to do. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that every photo I took wasn't just part of a job. Each shot was a memory, a message, a piece of a story that would soon come back to haunt them. As the ceremony ended and applause filled the hall, Ryan met my eyes for a brief second. It was quick, but enough. He didn't recognize me. Not really. Maybe he thought I'd moved on. Maybe he thought I'd disappeared. But no. I was right there. Quiet. Focused. Waiting. Sophie avoided looking in my direction. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it didn't matter. Because by the end of the day, she would. When they walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, guests threw petals into the air, cheering like they'd just witnessed love itself. To everyone else, it was a happy ending. But to me, it was the perfect beginning of something they never saw coming. As they exited the hall, I zoomed in, taking one last picture of them laughing together. And in that frozen frame, I saw it clearly. The irony, the betrayal, the beautiful lie. Sophie, the woman I loved more than life itself. Ryan, the friend I trusted like a brother. And me, the photographer capturing their dream, while quietly rewriting the ending. People always talk about revenge like it's fire. Hot, furious, uncontrollable. But the truth is, real revenge is cold. It's calm. It waits for the perfect moment, the perfect shot. And I had both. As the music swelled and guests moved toward the reception, I lowered my camera. For the first time all day, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew today wasn't about what they built. It was about what I was about to break. They thought I was just the man behind the camera. But soon they'd realize I was also the one behind the truth. It's strange, isn't it? How memories that once made you smile can suddenly feel like open wounds. Every time I think back to how it all began, it almost feels like another lifetime. A softer one. I met Sophie when I was 21. Back then, I wasn't anyone special, just a college kid with a camera and a head full of dreams. She was in the art department, painting murals on the walls for a charity event. Her hands were covered in color, and she had this quiet focus that drew me in instantly.
I still remember the first words she said to me. "You're blocking the light." I moved, embarrassed, and she smiled, a small teasing grin that stuck in my head for days. That's how it started. Not with fireworks or drama, just a simple moment that grew into something real. We'd stay up late studying, then end up talking about life. The kind of talks that make you believe anything's possible. She used to tell me her dream was to open her own art studio one day. And I told her mine was to photograph moments people would never forget. We used to laugh, saying we'd help each other build our dreams. And for a while, that's exactly what we did. When we graduated, life wasn't easy. We didn't have much. A tiny apartment with squeaky floors and secondhand furniture. But we had each other, and that made everything feel rich. She'd paint by the window while I worked long hours at weddings, family shoots, anything that paid the bills. Sometimes I'd come home exhausted, and she'd have dinner ready. Candles lit, soft music playing, her hair still tied up in a messy bun from painting. She'd show me her new artwork and ask, "Do you like it?" And I'd say, "I don't just like it, I love it. Just like I love you." And she'd laugh, that kind of laugh that makes the world stop for a second. Those were the good days, when love felt simple, easy, safe. That's also when Ryan started visiting more often. Ryan and I had known each other since we were kids. We grew up on the same street, shared the same bike, even got in trouble together more times than I could count. He was confident, funny, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and own it. Everyone liked him, teachers, friends, strangers. And I did too. He was like a brother to me. When Sophie met him for the first time, she said, "So, you're the famous Ryan I've heard so much about." Ryan smiled and replied, "Only the good parts, I hope." They laughed, and that was it. They got along easily, maybe too easily. But I didn't think anything of it back then. Why would I? He was my best friend. She was the woman I loved. And we were all happy, or at least it looked that way. Years passed, and things only got better. My photography started gaining attention. People loved my work, and bookings came in faster than I could handle. I saved every bit I could, not for myself, but for us, for Sophie's dream. When she finally opened her small art studio, I felt prouder than I ever had in my life. I designed the logo, took her promotional photos, helped her set up her first exhibit. I watched her stand there, surrounded by her paintings, eyes shining with tears, and I thought, this is it. This is happiness. So a few months later, I proposed. It was a small moment, nothing fancy. Just us by the lake where we first said, I love you. The sunset painted everything in gold, and I pulled out the ring. My hands were shaking, my heart racing. When she said yes, I swear the world stopped moving for a second. I'd never felt so sure of anything in my life. We called Ryan that night. He was the first to know. He laughed, cheered, and said, "Man, it's about time." He even insisted on throwing us an engagement dinner at his place. That night is still one of my favorite memories, and one of the hardest to think about now. Ryan gave a toast, one I'll never forget. He said, "To two people who prove that real love still exists. Sophie, you bring out the best in him. Daniel, don't ever let her go." Everyone clapped. Sophie blushed. I smiled, looking at both of them, completely unaware that one day, those same two people would destroy everything I believed in. After that, wedding plans started right away. Sophie was excited. Flower samples, invitation designs, the whole thing. I was caught up in work, taking photography gigs to save up for our honeymoon. We were busy, but happy. At least, that's what I thought. Then, little things started to change.
Sophie became distant, distracted during dinner, quiet during our late-night talks. She'd laugh at her phone sometimes, then quickly lock the screen when I walked in. I'd ask who it was, and she'd say, "Oh, just clients, art stuff." At first, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. She'd never given me a reason to doubt her before. But somewhere deep down, something didn't feel right. One night, we were sitting on the couch, and her phone lit up. It was past midnight. The message preview said, "I miss you too." Before I could say anything, she grabbed the phone, smiled awkwardly, and said, "It's a joke, just a friend messing around." A joke. That's what she called it. I laughed too, trying to play it off, but inside I felt something shift. A small crack forming where trust used to live. The days after that were quiet, colder. We still talked, still laughed sometimes, but it felt different, like she was halfway somewhere else, living a second life I didn't belong to. I started staying longer at work. She started coming home later. Our messages became shorter, our silences longer. And through it all, Ryan still showed up sometimes, helping with wedding planning, cracking jokes, acting like everything was fine. He'd slap me on the back and say, "You're a lucky guy, Dan." And I'd nod, smiling, thinking how lucky I was. I had no idea how wrong I was. Looking back, I guess love makes you blind. Not because you can't see the truth, but because you don't want to. You build this perfect image in your head, and when the cracks start showing, you just paint over them. You convince yourself it's fine, that everything's okay. But it wasn't. I just didn't know it yet. Because soon those late-night messages would turn into something far worse, and the woman I thought I knew better than anyone would become a stranger I couldn't even recognize. It's strange how heartbreak never begins with a storm. It starts quietly. A missed call, a change in tone, a silence where laughter used to be. That's how it began for me. Not with an explosion, but with small, invisible cracks beneath what looked like a perfect smile. At first, I didn't want to see them. Sophie was still smiling, Ryan was still around, everything looked normal, at least from the outside. But inside, something felt off. I used to wake up to her good morning texts, but they stopped. She used to hug me from behind while I made coffee. Now she just scrolled through her phone in silence. She used to ask about my day, but lately it felt like she didn't even hear me speak.
When I asked if something was wrong, she'd smile and say, "Just tired, Daniel. You worry too much." And I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. But the truth, it was already there. I just wasn't ready to face it. Ryan started pulling away too. He used to drop by often, movie nights, game nights, the usual. Then suddenly he was always busy, always canceling at the last minute. Once, he told me he had to work late at his studio, and I believed him until I stopped by to drop off some new lenses he'd borrowed. The lights were off. The door was locked. No sign of him. That was the first time I felt something tightened in my chest. Not jealousy, but confusion. Two people I loved most were both slipping away, and I couldn't understand why. A few days later, I ran into Ryan by chance at a coffee shop. He looked startled, like he didn't expect to see me. He said he'd just finished meeting a client, but I could smell it. Sophie's perfume, that same soft scent she wore every day. I laughed it off, pretending I didn't notice. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was being paranoid. But something deep inside whispered otherwise. Weeks passed, and Sophie became more distant. She started saying things like, "I need space," or "You're too focused on work lately." Every word felt like a quiet goodbye she didn't want to say out loud. One night, she came home late. I was waiting in the living room, lights off. Her keys jingled in the door, and she jumped when she saw me sitting there. "Where were you?" I asked. She smiled that tired, practiced smile and said, "At the studio. Ryan was helping me plan a gallery show." Ryan, again. I nodded, pretending to understand, pretending it didn't sting. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, asking myself questions I didn't want the answers to. Why did she flinch when I touched her? Why did she laugh less? Why did I feel like a guest in my own life? Then came the message. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special. I was editing photos on my laptop when my phone buzzed. It was from Ryan. She said yes. At first, I smiled, thinking maybe he'd proposed to someone new I didn't know about. I texted back, "Congrats, man. Who's the lucky girl?" No reply. A few minutes later, he called. His voice was shaky, nervous. "Hey, man, sorry, wrong text. Didn't mean to send that." He hung up before I could say anything. My stomach dropped. Something about his tone, the guilt, the panic, it wasn't right. She said yes. The words played in my head all night. She said yes. The next morning, I couldn't look at Sophie the same way. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek like nothing happened. But it felt wrong, like I was watching a stranger act out a memory. That evening, I tried to talk to her. I asked, gently, "Is everything okay with us?" She hesitated for a second, too long, then said, "You've been distant lately, Daniel, always working. Maybe we just need some time apart." Her words hit harder than she realized. Time apart. I wanted to ask if it was Ryan, but I didn't. Maybe I was afraid to hear the truth. Days later, I found out anyway. I'd gone to Ryan's studio to drop off some photos he'd asked me to edit. The door was slightly open. Inside, I heard laughter. Soft, familiar laughter. Sophie's. I froze. My heart was pounding as I stepped inside quietly. She was standing near the window, holding a paintbrush, her hair tied up like she used to when she painted for me. And Ryan was there beside her, smiling, his hand brushing hers. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no chaos, just a quiet moment that broke everything inside me. Sophie turned, and our eyes met. For a second, the whole world went silent. No excuses, no lies, just truth standing there between us. On her hand was a ring. My ring, the one I had given her when I asked her to be mine. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, feeling everything: anger, heartbreak, disbelief, and something worse than all of it: emptiness. She opened her mouth like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Ryan looked away, shame written all over his face. And me? I walked out. No shouting, no tears, just silence. Because sometimes silence says everything. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment for hours. No music, no movement, just me and the sound of my own breathing. You think you'll cry when your heart breaks, but sometimes the pain runs so deep that even tears refuse to fall. I remember staring at my hands, the same hands that built her studio, the same hands that held her through sleepless nights, and wondering how everything could disappear so fast. 5 years of love, gone in a moment. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. And when people asked if I was okay, I said, yeah, just tired. But the truth was, something inside me had shattered. That's how betrayal works. It doesn't just break your heart. It changes how you see the world. Every laugh feels fake. Every memory feels poisoned. You start questioning everything, even yourself. And yet, somewhere deep down, I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just numb. But numbness doesn't last forever. Soon the pain turns into something else. Something colder. Something sharper. And for me, that was the beginning of my revenge. They expected me to break. They expected me to run away and never come back. So I did what they expected, but not for the reason they thought. After that day at Ryan's studio, I didn't yell, I didn't throw things. I packed a bag and left the apartment we had shared. I told a few people I needed time to heal. Space, I said, because it sounded softer than the truth. The truth was harder to say. I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to think about Sophie's face, about that ring on her hand. I didn't want to listen to friends tell me it would get better. So I disappeared for a while, out of sight, but not out of mind. Nights were the worst. I would wake up in the dark and remember small things that looked harmless until you put them together. Her spoon in the sink the wrong way. The way Ryan's laugh came a little too easily. Little lies piled into a mountain of questions I had no answers for. Some nights I drove for hours and let the city pass me by. I watched people walking dogs, friends arguing over takeout, couples holding hands like nothing could break them. It all felt unreal. It was like I was watching a movie of a life I used to live, close enough to touch, but not mine anymore. Slowly, something in me shifted. Pain has a strange way of changing you. It either eats you or becomes a fuel. I chose the fuel. I turned everything I felt into work. I started shooting again, but the photos were different. Before, my photos were bright, smiling faces, sunlit afternoons, perfect white dresses. Now I found myself drawn to edges. A cracked window, a single chair in an empty room, a face half in shadow. I wanted pictures that felt real, not pretty. I wanted truth, even if it hurt to look at. People noticed. My new series, raw, quiet, honest, spread across social feeds. Strangers messaged me with stories of their own heartbreak. Small galleries asked to show my work. I was surprised at how many people understood the kind of quiet pain I was trying to capture. It wasn't about fame, it was about proving something to myself. I could still make something honest out of this ruin. I could stand again. Months went by, and I stayed busy. I said yes to jobs, took odd assignments, and moved between cities, always with my camera bag slung over my shoulder. I learned to sleep in strange places. I learned to speak without letting anyone see the raw edge beneath my voice. Then out of nowhere, news came through mutual friends. Ryan and Sophie were engaged. It hit like a cold wind. They were planning a wedding, a big one. My mouth dried.
I told myself it didn't matter. Then I told myself it again until the words stopped meaning anything.
Weeks later, my phone rang. A voice on the other end was warm and professional. "Hi, is this Daniel Reed?" she asked. "We're planning a wedding for October. Would you be available as the lead photographer?" Her voice carried the kind of excitement I used to have. I forced my own voice to be steady. "Maybe," I said. "Can you send details?" She described the venue, the schedule, the guest count. Everything sounded ordinary. Then she finally said their names. My hands went cold. I didn't have to ask who they were. I already knew. "Ryan Clark and Sophie Vale," she repeated. "Are you able to travel to Crestwood Hall for the ceremony?" I listened to the rest of the call like I was underwater. Months of planning, a weekend in late October, floral arrangements and a champagne send-off, people I used to know laughing over toasts I would never have been part of. When the call ended, I sat in silence. I could have said no. I could have walked away and let them have the memory they wanted. I could have told them who I was. But something colder had taken the place of the anger, a kind of quiet, patient purpose. "Yes," I said out loud to the empty room, "I'm available." I didn't tell the planner I knew the couple. I didn't tell her anything. I sent a short, professional message confirming the date and fee. Then I booked my flight and booked a cheap room near the venue. I bought new memory cards and a fresh battery pack. I rehearsed the shots in my head like a script. People imagine revenge as something loud. The truth is mine was quiet. It was careful. It didn't need to hurt like the way they hurt me. It just needed to show them something they tried so hard to hide. My plan wasn't to humiliate. I don't believe in tearing someone down just to feel better. That's petty and noisy. What I wanted was simpler. I wanted truth to show up where they expected lies. I wanted their perfect picture to include the cracks they worked so hard to keep out of frame. For months I prepared without telling a soul. I watched their public profiles, learned their habits, noted the faces likely to be in the crowd. I researched the venue, the lighting, the best angles. I practiced being invisible in a room full of people. I practiced smiling when it felt like breaking. When the day finally came, I had rehearsed every moment so many times in my head that I felt oddly calm. I told myself I was doing my job. I told myself I was giving them what they paid for. I told myself the truth would be enough. They took my heart, but this time I'd take something they'd never get back. People think time softens pain. They're wrong. Time doesn't heal, it sharpens. It trims away the noise until only one clear thought remains. For me, that thought was their wedding. The day the contract was confirmed, I sat in front of my computer for hours, reading the email again and again. Every word felt like a challenge. The planner had no idea who I was. To her, I was just another photographer, professional, polite, dependable. That was exactly what I wanted her to believe. I responded the same way I always did. "Thank you for choosing me. Looking forward to capturing your special day." My fingers didn't tremble, my heart didn't race. Calm had become my armor. The weeks before the wedding, I studied everything. Their social media pages, the venue, the guest list. Sophie's posts were full of excitement, flowers, dress fittings, countdown captions. Ryan's photos showed him grinning beside her, all charm and confidence. They looked perfect, and maybe that was the point. Every night I planned the shoot like a surgeon planning an operation. Camera placement, lighting tests, backup lenses. Nothing left to chance. But behind every practical detail, another plan was taking shape. One built not on anger, but on truth. I didn't want to destroy them. I just wanted the mask to fall, for everyone to see who they really were. That was my gift to them, a moment of truth they could never erase. The morning of the wedding, I woke before sunrise. The city was quiet, still half asleep, unaware of what was about to happen. I packed my gear carefully, like a ritual, each lens cleaned, each battery checked. As I zipped the bag shut, I caught my reflection in the window. The man looking back wasn't broken anymore. He was steady, focused, ready. When I arrived at Crestwood Hall, staff were rushing around, adjusting flowers, fixing ribbons, polishing glass. The air smelled of roses and nervous excitement. No one recognized me. Why would they? To them, I was just the photographer with a calm smile and steady hands.
The planner greeted me warmly. "You're early. We love that." I nodded. "Always best to capture the light while it's soft." She smiled and hurried off, and I set up my camera near the altar. Through the viewfinder, I saw everything. Chairs aligned perfectly, sunlight spilling through stained glass windows, the altar glowing in gold. It looked peaceful, almost holy. But behind that calm beauty was history. My history. As guests began to arrive, I moved among them like a shadow. They smiled, posed, laughed. Every click of the shutter hit 1,000 memories in my head. A shot of Ryan greeting an old friend. Flash. I remembered us at 15, promising to always have each other's backs. A photo of Sophie hugging her mother. Flash. I remembered the night she told me she couldn't imagine life without me. The camera became my mask. Through it, I could look at them without breaking. I could turn pain into composition, heartbreak into art. Between moments, my mind drifted to the plan. It wasn't complicated, just a few quiet adjustments to the slideshow they wanted projected during the reception. An innocent request they'd sent weeks earlier. They'd wanted their story told through pictures. I would tell it truthfully. As I checked my equipment, Ryan walked by, laughing with his groomsmen. For a second, our eyes met. He froze, confusion flickering in his expression. Then it vanished. I saw him shrug it off, assuming I was just another hire. That tiny moment, his ignorance, felt like power. Later, Sophie entered for her bridal photos. She looked stunning, of course. She always did. For a heartbeat, her gaze brushed mine. Her smile faltered, just slightly, almost invisible. Then she turned away, pretending not to notice. I could have said something. I could have exposed everything right there. But no, I wasn't here to shout or accuse. I was here to let the truth speak for itself. When the ceremony began, I stood in my usual place, camera steady, heart calm. Each frame I captured felt like closing another chapter of my life. They exchanged vows, words that once belonged to me. They laughed. They kissed. The crowd cheered. And all the while, my mind whispered one quiet sentence. They wanted a perfect memory. I'll give them one, just not the one they expect. Weddings are strange things. So much effort goes into making a single day look perfect. The flowers, the lights, the laughter. But perfection has a way of cracking under the weight of truth. That morning, I woke up calm. No anger, no nerves, just focus. Every detail had already been planned down to the second. My cameras were charged, my memory cards labeled, my files organized. But the real story, the one no one knew about, was already waiting on a single hidden drive inside my laptop. It wasn't destruction I wanted. It was revelation. The ceremony began under the soft hum of strings and sunlight. Ryan stood at the altar, confident as ever, smiling for the cameras. Sophie walked down the aisle, glowing in her gown, her eyes locked on him. The guests sighed, admiring what they thought was love. I stood at the back, framing every moment with precision, each click of my camera steady and deliberate. Through the lens, they looked flawless, but I knew the cracks behind the smiles.
When the officiant asked for the vows, I zoomed in. Ryan spoke first, words rehearsed to sound heartfelt. He said things like, "I've loved you since the day we met, and you make me a better man." I almost laughed, because I remembered the day he met her. She was still mine then.
Then Sophie spoke. Her voice trembled as she promised forever. For a second, our eyes met, and her words faltered, just for a moment. Then she smiled again, pretending it didn't happen. The guests clapped as they exchanged rings. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. The kiss followed, long and dramatic. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and me? I just kept clicking, frame after frame of lies frozen in beautiful light. By the time we reached the reception, everything was running perfectly. The decorations, the speeches, the music. Flawless. Ryan came up to me once, patting my shoulder. "Hey, great work, man. Appreciate your professionalism." I smiled, just doing my job. He had no idea how true that was. While they danced and toasted, I moved silently through the crowd, adjusting cables and syncing equipment. The projector was set to display a slideshow of their memories, a romantic montage for their first dance. They'd sent me the photos weeks ago. I'd simply added a few of my own. When the lights dimmed, the room hushed. The DJ announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, the new couple's first dance." Applause filled the hall. Sophie and Ryan stepped onto the floor, smiling, hands clasped, swaying to soft piano music. The screen behind them flickered to life. At first, it showed what everyone expected: childhood pictures, their engagement shoot, their vacations. Laughter rippled through the guests. People clapped and cheered. Then, the next image appeared. A message, blurry at first, then clear. A text from Sophie to Ryan, "He'll never find out." The laughter stopped. Confused murmurs filled the room. Another picture followed. A photo of Sophie and Ryan together, dated months before she and I broke up. Gasps, a ripple of silence. Then another image, a screenshot of Ryan texting me. She said yes, the one he swore was sent by mistake. The music faltered. The DJ looked around, unsure whether to stop. On the screen, the slideshow continued, a timeline of deceit, each image carefully chosen. Photos I had found, messages I had saved. Proof that their love story began long before mine ended. Sophie froze in the middle of the dance floor, her smile collapsing. Ryan turned pale, reaching for the projector operator, but it was too late. The truth was already in motion. Gasps turned into whispers. Whispers turned into shock. Some guests looked away. Others stared, speechless. And me? I just kept clicking. Camera in hand, capturing their silence, their stillness, the exact moment when everything they built cracked open. For years, I'd wondered what justice looked like. That day, I realized it didn't have to be loud. It could be a single, perfect frame, the one where lies finally met the light. As the last image faded, the photo of the three of us at my engagement dinner, I quietly turned off the projector from my phone. The room remained in stunned silence. Ryan's mother stood up, tears in her eyes. Sophie covered her face, shaking. Ryan tried to speak, but his voice broke. I didn't wait for what came next. I packed my camera, slung the strap over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos was unfolding. Raised voices, footsteps, confusion. But I didn't look back. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. For the first time in a long time, I breathed easily. Somewhere behind me, their fairy tale was burning quietly. But in front of me, peace.
I stopped for a moment at the edge of the parking lot and looked up at the sky. A soft smile touched my lips.
"The truth doesn't need to scream," I whispered. "Sometimes it only needs a lens." The truth has a way of traveling faster than we ever plan. I thought my part in their story ended when I walked out of that hall, but a few days later, the world decided to write the final chapter for me. Someone at the wedding, maybe a guest, maybe a staff member, had recorded the entire moment. The slideshow, the gasps, the silence that followed. And like everything in this world, it found its way online. Within hours, it spread. A video titled "The Photographer's Truth" began appearing everywhere. People couldn't stop watching. Some called it heartbreaking, others called it justice. But for me, it was just the truth, finally free. I didn't post it. I didn't say a word. I just watched from a distance as the story I once lived turned into a headline. Sophie's art studio started losing clients. Sponsors backed away. People whispered that her perfect image had cracked. Ryan's business wasn't spared either. The same charm that once made him loved now made him look fake. Old friends distanced themselves, pretending they never admired him. In a way, it was poetic. They spent years pretending, and now the world saw the truth they tried to hide. But I didn't smile, not in satisfaction, not in cruelty. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't always make you feel better. It just makes things clear. Messages started pouring in, strangers writing to say they admired my strength, that I'd done what they wished they could. I didn't respond. I didn't want to be a hero in someone's revenge fantasy. I just wanted peace. So, I packed my things again. My cameras, my prints, my memories, and left town quietly. I moved to a new city, a place where no one knew my name, where I could start again without being the guy from that wedding. I found a small apartment near the river with light that hit the walls just right in the mornings. I started taking photos again, not of weddings, not of people smiling for others, but of truth. Candid, raw, unposed truth. People noticed my work. They said it felt real, that I captured what others missed. They didn't know how I learned to see that way. They didn't know what it cost me. One evening, months later, I received an email. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." The sender's name made my heart stop for a moment. Sophie. I stared at it for a long time. Curiosity told me to open it. Closure whispered that I didn't need to. But I did. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. She said she'd made mistakes, that she didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted me to know she never meant to hurt me. She wrote about regret, about how love can turn selfish when fear takes over. And she ended with, "I hope you're happy now." I read it twice. Then I closed it, quietly. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because some conversations end best in silence. Now, years later, people still talk about that wedding sometimes. Not by name, but by the story, the one where the truth came out through a lens. And sometimes I'm asked if I'd do it again. My answer is always the same. I don't regret exposing the truth, but I learned something deeper. Revenge might close one wound, but forgiveness is what truly heals you, even if it's just forgiving yourself. Because holding on to pain doesn't fix the past. It just keeps you there. Sometimes, when I look through my camera now, I still think about that day. The light, the faces, the silence that followed. But instead of anger, I feel gratitude.
Because that pain taught me something I might never have learned otherwise. That people can betray you. That love can change. But truth always finds its way through the cracks. And maybe that's why my photos feel different now. Because I don't chase perfection anymore. I chase honesty. I once thought revenge would give me peace. It didn't. It just cleared the noise so I could hear what really mattered. Peace doesn't come when others hurt the way you did. It comes when you stop needing them to. Some wounds heal best when you stop reopening them. You know, people often think revenge means hurting someone. But it doesn't. Sometimes it's about showing them the truth. The kind they can't run from. The kind they see every time they close their eyes. That's what I learned. When everything first fell apart, I thought I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to feel the same emptiness I felt when I saw them together. But with time, I realized pain doesn't heal pain. It just keeps you chained to what broke you. The real revenge, the quiet kind, is moving on, living better, turning what destroyed you into something that builds you back stronger. These days, my life is quiet again. Not empty, peaceful. I work out of a small studio by the river. The light there is soft in the mornings, almost golden. When I photograph people now, I don't tell them to smile. I tell them to feel. Because honesty, not perfection, is what makes a moment real. A few weeks ago, I photographed a young couple. They were shy at first, but when they looked at each other, it was different. No lies, no performance, no masks. Just love. Simple, honest, pure.
As I watched them laugh and whisper between shots, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not because I forgot the past, but because I'd finally stopped letting it define me. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love can fail. People can change. But self-respect, once you reclaim it, becomes your strongest truth. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means you're done carrying the weight of what they did. It means you choose peace over pain. When Sophie wrote that email, part of me wanted to reply, to say I forgave her. But then I realized forgiveness doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it's felt, in the way you breathe easier, in the way you stop checking the past for answers. Now, when I hold my camera, I think about everything it's seen. Joy, heartbreak, lies, truth. It captures everything without judgment. And maybe that's why I love it. Because it reminds me that even when people hide behind masks, the lens always finds what's real. I guess that's life too. Time and truth, they always work together. No matter how deep the secret, how well the lie is buried, they'll find it. And when they do, the world finally sees things as they are. So, here I am, still behind the camera, still telling stories. But now, I don't chase revenge. I chase understanding. I chase moments that matter, the ones that remind me that love, even after it's broken, can still teach you something beautiful. Because if pain can shape you, healing can redefine you. And maybe that's the real ending. Not the fall, not the revenge, but the rise that comes after. The camera never lies, and neither does time. Both reveal the truth eventually. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it, because sometimes stories like these remind us that truth, no matter how painful, always sets us free.
Subscribe for more stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. And let's keep reminding each other that even after heartbreak, life still finds a way to be beautiful again. Until next time, keep your heart open, your mind clear, and remember, the camera never lies, and neither does time.